Hello, I'm Saki. I'm going to talk about my graduation thesis. The theme of the graduation thesis was a study of teacher beliefs about teaching into pragmatic competence, insights into its value, methodology, and issues to be solved. This is today's agenda. First of all, I would love to share the idea of pragmatics with you. In a broad sense, pragmatics is a study of language in use according to Hume 2014. Starting from Hime's communicative competence in 1972, so far there have been a lot of researchers to develop the idea of pragmatics. In 1983, Beach and Thomas made a clear division of language use in pragmatics, namely pragmalinguistics and social pragmatics. In 2010, Bartek Hari explained the meaning of pragmatics as meaning in context. It bridges the gap between system side of language and the use side, and it is both of them at the same time. The languages we use have two characteristics, namely pragmalinguistics and social pragmatics. Pragmalinguistics deals with grammatical coherence, and social pragmatics is related to taboo topics, how to apologize or how to greet people. When you learn second language, in our case English, you have to know, of course, about grammatical rules in English, but also you better know how English is authentically used in a context. For example, how to make requests to Luis sensei in English, or how do you say sorry to your senpai? And if you don't know how authentically English is used, you might face pragmatic failure. And according to Thomas, pragmatic failure caused by inability to understand what is meant by what is said. Bouchard explained this meaning like pragmatic failure, the product of an inability to fully comprehend the intention behind an utterance. So sometimes in people's conversations, there are like hidden meanings behind people's utterances. If you don't notice it, you might fail in communications. And someone might judge you as uncommunicative communicator. So it is very important to explore. As I'm interested in teachers' beliefs about teaching to pragmatic competence in NFL context, I tried to find some previous studies related to teachers' cognition study, but I couldn't find many of them. So I thought it would be nice if I fill the gap. Teachers' role has a huge effect on students' pragmatic awareness. However, teachers' cognition study or beliefs research are still few. My research questions was, how do English educators view the value of teaching second language pragmatic competence in NFL classrooms? How do English educators help their students to boost their second language pragmatic competence, and why do they do it that way? What issues related to second language pragmatic competence do English educators think still remain, and how do they approach them? I conducted interviews with 8 scholars from JALT community, Pragmatics SIG. I used Zoom, all in English. I asked them to send me consent forms with signature. I use Otter AI for transcribing. For analysis, I did deductive coding with the reference of grounded theory and constant comparative method. So I made questions to ask, and from question 1 to 3 are related to participants' basic information. They are very important to be asked because it's kind of related to their beliefs, how they think of teaching elder pragmatics competence in EFL classrooms. And I try to make questions related to my research questions each. For example, my fifth question, have you ever tried teaching English classes which focus on helping students improve their JALT pragmatic competence? If you have already done it, did you find something that should be improved? If you have done it, what kind of difficulties would you expect? This question has a strong connection to my second RQ and third RQ, issues and methodology. I asked 8 questions in all, but sometimes I changed while I'm listening to their answers, because they talked much, and sometimes they covered my further questions, like my second questions or next questions. So I sometimes change my questions and try to find some details. This is a course example of code list, and this is also an example of the process of my coding and analysis. So now I'm going to talk about the resulting discussions of the present research. Answering my first RQ, how do English educators view the value of teaching second language pragmatic competence in EFL classrooms? This question is related to beliefs and value. When I asked their background, one of them answered, I have a business background and I saw many pragmatic failures among Japanese colleagues. And T6 said, was talking about her intercultural, like the experience of being intercultural communicator in Japan. Just being an American living in Japan and communicating in Japanese, sometimes in English with Japanese people. And it's so much more than knowing grammar and vocabulary. So this is strongly connected to her idea of pragmatics itself. And my second research question was, how do English educators help their students to boost their JALT pragmatic competence, and why do they introduce it that way? This question is about methodology of teaching JALT pragmatic competence. I think I could get very interesting answers from them when I ask some methodologies that they use. T8, for example, said, I thought maybe just a 1 minute non-stop, no-silence conversation would be something that was not too challenging because it's 1 minute. I don't want to just give them a list of useful phrases. But T4 shared his idea that he used textbook and he shows some conversation strategies with short words or phrases. And as you can see in T7 answers, some of the teachers let their students analyze some example conversation from the perspective of pragmatic use. And also some teachers, one teacher tries to bridge kakomon practice and pragmatic use in English. That was interesting to hear. When you teach kakomon to your students, you don't have to say pragmatics, and the teacher can expand the linguistic features and more pragmatic aspects. So if you can combine pragmatic learning with the grammar learning and test preparation, that would be great. My third research question was, what issues related to second language pragmatic competence do English educators think still remain, and how do they approach them? This question was related to the issues to be solved. Issues were kind of divided into 2 or 3 types. Japanese cultural norms, Japanese educational system, or the lack of teachers' awareness, lack of teachers' pragmatic awareness. For example, T6 said, so much Japanese English education is teaching about grammar and vocabulary, and actually becoming communicative and competent. It's so much more than that. And T5, students are reluctant to disagree on the whole in Japan. T2 said, there are many pragmatic errors of teaching in these errors because teachers do not have pragmatic awareness, and it is not fair to learners. The conclusion about belief. English teachers' motivation for teaching pragmatic competence come from what they wish their students to be able to do with English. So they wish something for students to be able to something with the use of English. And in order to make students to be able to things with English, pragmatics is significant to be taught. And their teaching beliefs are based on their backgrounds in academics, teaching experience, being an intercultural communicator living in Japan, job experience in different fields like business background, or one teacher had a background of music that was interesting, or their national identity. About methodologies, there were 4 types, namely bottom-up, top-down, mixed, and non-categorized. Issues were also interesting to be explored. Methodologies were not determined, or Japanese education system is kind of a key factor that students might struggle with authentic use of English. Japanese cultural norms, balance between social pragmatics and pragmalinguistics. Limitations of the present study and suggestions for further research. As I called for participants within SIG, within a group, maybe there was a lack of variation of participants in their cultural, ethical background and academic background. Most of the participants were from English-speaking countries, so participants could be called for from more varied areas. As I said before, the way of asking further questions was kind of problematic because issues and teachers' beliefs and even methodologies are often mixed. So some questions were misinterpreted, and it actually made me feel difficulty in coding and in the process of analysis. So I could ask questions before I conduct interviews. Pedagogical implications. So one of the issues that seemingly very important to be explored was the lack of teachers' awareness and learners' awareness of pragmatics. So there is a need to develop pragmatic awareness. TESOL course or Kyoshuku Kate can contain pragmatics classes for teachers. And methodologies of teaching pragmatic competence are developed, at least from experts such as the participants of the present study. So since not so many English teachers, I would say, are aware of pragmatics competence or teaching pragmatic competence in EFL context, methodologies are not spread out. So if experts, such as the participants of the present study, could spread the ideas more, pedagogical effect would be huge. These are the differences. I'm sorry that I cannot go today. If you have further questions you want to ask me, please email me or just talk to me on campus. Thank you so much.